All right, everyone. Welcome back to today's episode of Words of the Wise. Today I have Chief Timm from Williams Bay PD in Wisconsin. He's really community based and wellness driven. He integrates resilience, strategic thinking, and holistic approach to the agency's well being. He's really advancing initiatives to support mental, physical, financial, and spiritual health with the goal of supporting his team, building trust, improving recruitment, and elevating the service in which they provide to the community. Welcome to the show, Chief Timm. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. This is wonderful.
Yeah, of course. So I'm looking forward to this. We had a pretty great conversation offline, and I know that we really aligned on a lot of the topics. So I'm looking forward to it. One of the things that you said to me that kind of stuck out was this word holistic, and you're really trying to take more of a holistic approach when it comes to wellness within your organization. What is your definition of holistic, and why is that important for you?
Yeah, I think what it really breaks down to, for me at least, is that we're attacking a problem of wellness and from a larger standpoint. It would be foolish, and we've done this before in law enforcement, but to just say that, well, this is a one-stop shop. We're going to be able to hit a gym. We're going to get a gym membership for all of our officers, and that's going to cover everybody. Well, that's not fair, and that's not a realistic approach for individuals. So if we can go into like a jiu-jitsu gym, and that's where our officers find really a greater wellness for them, or a yoga studio, and they want to do a more yoga based, and these are specifically fitness based wellness programs. But then we look at the finance backing, and what we did is we broke down what does wellness really mean for us as a department. And fitness and mental wellness were the first things right away. And I said, okay, well, let's talk about fitness. What does that mean to each of our officers? And I'm very fortunate where I have a small enough department where I can basically bring them in and say, what does it mean to you? Mm-hmm. And I know not everybody's that fortunate, but it's important to know. And so when I'm able to bring in an officer and they say, I really, yoga is more my speed for fitness. Okay, great. Let's get focused in on yoga and bring that back to the police department so that we can all partake in that, because it's not just there's pieces of everything that we can bring back to each other. And then we started getting into the mental wellness, and we're trying to solve a problem, but if we don't know the root cause, and so then we started thinking about, well, what's the root cause? Well, sometimes financial problems cause mental issues. We start overthinking that. We're constantly thinking, okay, well, I have to work the overtime. I have to do something because we're trying to make ends meet. Okay, well, is there a way that we as leaders can support our officers who need that? So we send officers or bring in financial experts to discuss that. And then it's from a spiritual aspect, we started the chaplain program. Non-denominational chaplain comes in. We'll do ride-alongs, talk with our officers as much as they need, and that's strictly without us. And so gives another aspect, hopefully filling a void that maybe we didn't have previous. And we don't know exactly at what point they might be needed, so it's very important to us to make sure that we have all those tools, if you will, available to our officers.
I really like this idea of like, how can we dissect every single thing? And then how can we ask the questions of, are we doing enough? Is there a way that we can do better or be better? And I think that that's a constant conversation. It's not a one and done, right? And so, we can even put these into like this, kind of concept into our own personal lives. I think if we had more of like a consistent strategy of, okay, like maybe we reassess quarterly, maybe we reassess twice a year. What does that look like for us, to kind of look at ourselves and say, hey, like, am I doing everything as effectively as possible? Or is there a better way of doing things? And sometimes maybe the answer is yes, like everything's working really well. We think it's really, really effective, but maybe it's no, or maybe there is a way to do things differently or better. And when it comes to organizational wellness, I think you can obviously apply that same concept of, maybe it's quarterly that you guys are reassessing, like, okay, what do we have? Is it effective? Could it be even more effective? Yes or no? What does that look like? Getting feedback from, and these are all the things that I heard you saying,
Right. Yeah.
getting feedback from your team as to what they think would be successful for them, because you're understanding that it's not a one size fits all. And, some people are going to like jujitsu and some people will never ever set foot inside a jujitsu gym ever.
Yes.
And
That's
so,
absolutely
the
right.
importance is that everyone feels like they have resources, and you said that you have it when they need it. And
Yeah.
I think that that statement is so important because you don't want to be in a situation where now you need it and you don't have it. So it goes back to this conversation of proactive is better than reactive every time. And there's
Yeah.
always going to be reactive measures. But then were you proactive in having resources? So when you do have to be proactive, you have it. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everything that you said, because it's a conversation, and it's a constant conversation of how can we reassess so that we're supporting ourselves and, the organization as best as you can.
Well, and you brought up such a good point, right? We talk about proactive policing and how do you stop crimes? Well, it's just being out there. So everything we do, we're constantly, we need to start looking internally and seeing those problems as well.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we fix those problems before they start? And, to your other point, really just, I look at it every budget season. We look at, okay, well, what could go wrong with our fleet? What could go wrong with our IT? And we try to plan for that. Well, let's take a look at that internally too, right? We can break that down and we can say, okay, well, we need to get this taken care of first, because without the individuals in those seats, we're nobody, right? We're not a police department with those officers, so they need to be at their top every day.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic because, and I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I change my opinion, but I do think that one day wellness and training will just be training. I don't think that there's going to be really like a separation. I think it's just all going to be viewed as training and something that's normal and that you guys do on a consistent basis. And I do think that there's going to be a day where wellness is mandatory across the board. I think that we will reach that eventually, and we're not there yet. But um, to your point, you guys prepare for the worst case scenario, right? Like, plan A, B, and C for
Right.
everything that can happen, and you have training in order to prepare yourselves for those things, right? You have firearms training, you have your defensive tactics training. You talk about, like, hey, like, what happens if you enter into a home and this happens? You know exactly what to do. And if it's predictable, it's preventable, right? So, and I know it's such a cliche thing to say, but it's true. And so when it comes to wellness, there are a lot of things that we are seeing in the wellness space that are so predictable. We know that if you're really tight and you don't have any mobility or flexibility, that your risk of injuring yourself is so much higher. We
Right.
know this. We also know that a lot of the injuries, the majority of the injuries that we're seeing, are because of deficiencies in mobility and stability. So there's a lot of these stats and things that we know, and that's just one example from a physical perspective, right? Like, we
Yeah.
know what happens from a mental perspective. You said some things about financial stress. If we know that these things are likely to happen over a long career and that you're going to see these things, then how can we take the same approach that you take when it comes to training of saying, hey, like, we're going to prepare you guys in advance so that when these things happen, you know what to do and you're prepared for these things proactively. And then if you do get injured, we got you there too. But I
Right.
think it's an interesting conversation because I do think historically wellness has always been very reactive.
You're absolutely right, and it became it became evident to me when it was, hey, everybody gets a gym membership at the city-owned gym, my previous job. And it was like, okay, that's great. I can lift 500 pounds squatting. When am I going to do this in work? And I think that's when my wife, as we spoke about, is a yoga instructor, and I didn't want to do yoga. That wasn't who I was going to be. But now it just makes so much more sense, and how effective that is in line with everything else that you're doing, and how important it is. It's incredible. Couldn't tell you the last time I had to pick up 500 pounds, but I can tell you the last time I had to get out of a vehicle very fast. So, and that's all part of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. It's very important.
It's interesting that you said that. I just had a chief from Ohio talking about how there was another chief that started looking at the physical fitness standard that they were doing. And they were kind of having the same conversation of like, when on the job are you ever going to run a mile and a half? Like, probably not really ever, but you're sure going to be like have to sprint, a short distance. You're going to have to jump over a wall. And so they started taking a look at what are the actual functions of what we have to do on a day-to-day basis. And then how can we adapt our physical fitness standard to things that you actually have to do? And they had like, pushing, I think they had pushing, they had carrying weight, sprinting, jumping over a wall. There were like some things, and now it's a standard that some agencies are using, and it's been really effective for them because again, it goes back to like how is this going to impact your longevity specifically? And I think that we could take that a step further and we can talk about the mobility piece that's not really, talked about. We can talk about some of these other things in the context of, okay, well, we know you're going to do these things, and we know that these are the typical injuries that are going to happen when you do those things. And so then how can we incorporate some of the other, just, don't call it yoga, just call it like tactical stretching. And then, people will think it's cool, right? So it's like,
Right. Yeah. You can call it whatever you want, as long as it's doing the same function. I mean, that's the important piece, and I love that because fire stations and fire departments have been doing this for a long time. They've been doing. They don't have maybe the mile and a half. Maybe they have the sprint, or they're carrying the dummy. They get them out of the house, and they were. I give a lot of credit to the fire departments as well because they have those standards, but they have them specific, and they're realistic, and we need to really transform our physical readiness tests because that previous chief is 100% correct. A mile and a half, realistically, you're going to have a drone or canines out, and you're not going to need that. Plus, it's really unsafe. So realistically, that's never going to happen. So we need to actually make it something that's obtainable and realistic.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just think it's all a part of evolution, like evolving how you do things. And again, it goes back to that conversation of, can we dissect everything? Can you look at everything and say, like, okay, I know that we've done this physical fitness testing forever. Is there a better way to do it? Yes or no? And, maybe it's yes, maybe it's no. I'm not the one to judge that, but I think it's just having the questions. It's so funny that you said you don't care what you call it. So when I first started in this wellness space 8 years ago, I was very against it. I was like, we're all adults here. We're going to call it what it is. Like, and I was like, if it's yoga, we're calling it yoga. If it's something else, like if it's breath work, we're calling it breath work. And I realized, and maybe this is maturity or, whatever, but I just started to realize we have to meet people where they are. And if someone is not receptive to a certain word, they're never ever going to do it. And so what's the point in like trying to push this thing, where they're already blocked off from it? And so I agree with you now. It's like, hey, whatever we call it, I don't care. If it benefits you and it gets you to do the thing, I'm all about it. But I remember being so resistant to that in the beginning. I was like, we are adults, like just learn to say the word yoga and it's fine. But I do recognize that you have to meet people where they are, and there has to be a level of receptiveness to what we're doing, or else it's never going to have that like benefit that we're trying to, achieve if no one does it. So, um, you learn over time and you mature, I think.
And you've talked to enough law enforcement individuals. We're a stubborn group. We can be, right? And so, yeah, sometimes you need to make those tweaks, and it's if it benefits the greater good, then it is what it is. But
For sure.
it's funny that you say that, because I was one of those people.
Yeah.
I was absolutely one of those people.
You can just make a joke later, like you get them doing it, and then like you walk by and you're like, you're doing yoga, and once they already like it, and then they're
Right.
like,
Yeah.
dang
Yeah. Exactly.
it. What was your own personal experience with wellness in this career?
It's an ongoing journey, right? And I think as we continue to grow up or mature, and as we age, our fitness changes. So I don't want to say this is how it is and how it's always going to be, but it's really changed and evolved. But when I was trying to get into law enforcement, it was really difficult. This was 2009, between 2009 and 2012, and there'd be 300 applicants for two positions, right? So I'm sure everybody who you spoke to has said something along those lines of recruiting has changed. But I remember trying so hard to get in, and it was demoralizing because I couldn't get in. And so I took a job doing an office job work. I went out to the bars way too much, ate takeout food way too much. Ended up, I moved up to Nome, Alaska, where I started my law enforcement career. And at that point, I remember I applied for the job. I would walk to the police department every day trying to get in front of the chief. And they didn't have any openings. Well, finally one did end up happening, and it opened up. So I got the job, and I was so excited. This is a dream come true for me, right? This is something I've wanted to do since I was in fifth grade. This was all my passion, and I remember being so excited. And one of my references called me, and he just got off the phone with our background investigator. I'm like, so how was it? And he said it was great. The first question they asked me, and the most important thing, and they kind of came back to it a couple times, was the fact that you're 270 pounds. And they were concerned that you wouldn't be able to do the duties of the job. Mm. And that was a punch to the gut, because I was 5'8", 5'9", 270 pounds. I was not proud of myself, right? So I talked with the chief, and that was one of the things he brought up. After the background, he said, well, I mean, medically they say you're fit, but this weight is going to be a hindrance to you. And I remember there was just a sense of like guilt. Like I let my old Justin down, right? So I had to reevaluate myself, and I had the self-assessment, right? And take a look in the mirror is what everybody says, but it was a big mirror because I was a big guy. So I was embarrassed. So I went to the police academy through the Alaska State Troopers, did their police academy. It's roughly 16 weeks. And I remember dropping, I was about 190 pounds when I left. Because I did take focus on that. And I think it was my corporal's mission was to get me in shape. So, and I did the extra exercising. I did my goal was there was a badge for fitness for duty. And that was my goal. I wanted to get that because I wanted to prove myself wrong, right? It wasn't anybody else's fault but my own. So, and I did. And so went through that. Started taking a liking to jiu-jitsu, and that was keeping me in shape. And then, my chief, at the time, we were talking about wellness, and it was just all right, well, you have a gym membership to the city-owned gym. You can go in there whenever you want and use the gym and the workout facility. And it just wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for us. So ended up moving back to Wisconsin to take over this role here in Williams Bay, and really got into this jiu-jitsu gym here in just down the road, and they started offering law enforcement discounts and just more of the defensive tactics in law enforcement. They bring in special instructors just for law enforcement so that we can maintain our fitness, but it also kind of brings in the element of defensive tactics as well. I shouldn't say every week, but we try to get in family yoga. My wife's a yoga instructor, so we do family yoga and really just try to maintain that level of wellness and fitness. It went from how much can you squat to are you able to keep up in the jiu-jitsu gym, because there's two different muscle groups working there. Mm-hmm. So it's really evolving, and it always will. I mean, there's never going to be a set time of, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. You got to constantly be watching and looking and making sure you're responding to your body as well.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. And I want to kind of like recap and circle back to a few things that you said. But the first thing is you said that someone gave you feedback and you were able to receive that feedback, which I think is a really important thing to recognize, because how many of us have either met someone or who have been the person, to get feedback and not be receptive to it? And I think that our knee-jerk reaction sometimes is to be really defensive. And we've all had other people who we try to give feedback to, and they're super defensive. They don't want to hear it. We have all also been that person. I would argue tooth and nail to anyone who tells me that they've never ever been, that person that's not receptive to some feedback. So I think we've all done it before. But for you to have the ability to have someone say, hey, we don't know if you can perform the functions of this career. And for your first response to be like, oh, wow, they're right. And it's my fault, to take that accountability and that self-assessment, and then to say, what am I going to do to improve myself, set a goal, and then to achieve that through hard work, I think is a really important story to tell anybody, because everyone has the ability to do that. But I think step one is you have to be open to feedback. And then you also have to have that accountability, and then you have to take action. And a lot of us will take feedback and then we never ever take action. So I appreciate you sharing that, because I think that piece of the story is really important, because we all have the ability to take our own lives into our own hands and to make it better.
Well, and don't get me wrong, I'm sure I was angry, right? but there was also an anger, like I said, an anger with myself. Nobody made me eat that cheeseburger, right? Nobody made me have, Taco Bell 6 nights in a row. It was a long term, and it was me. And of course I said, of course I can do the job. I can play basketball, we'd play basketball, but then it's having a real conversation. And if you're not willing to have a real conversation, and the people who cared about me have a real conversation, you're not going to get anywhere. You have to accept that feedback, get over the emotions, and be like, okay, let's actually break that down. And is it true? And it was absolutely accurate.
Well, I think that's the important part, is asking yourself, is it true? Because there are some people who might give you unsolicited feedback and it's not true, and you don't need to listen to them, but if it's people who cared about you, who are having these conversations with you. And I agree with you. I think that, if I think back to all the times where I did have some sort of realization, it did start with the kind of, I don't want to say like FU mentality, but maybe a little bit of defensiveness, right? Like internally of you don't know what you're talking about. But then having that light bulb of oh, wait, is it true? Is it me? And then when you can be honest with yourself and have that conversation, then it's incumbent upon you to take action. If the answer is yes, that is true, then what can you do? I'm curious, because I had a very similar experience where Um, I, and you're gonna roll your eyes at this, but I am the person who can eat really bad and I just get skinnier. Like I have to work really hard to like keep muscle on and to like
Boy, that
stay
sounds
big.
horrible.
Horrible. But I did have a stint of time in my life where I was drinking a lot. I was smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. I was eating fast food with every meal. I was super unhealthy, very unhappy. And I started taking care of myself and choosing a healthier path. And I had this moment, I don't know if you've had this yourself too, where I was like, I did not realize that I felt as bad as I did until I had the opposite. And so, like, when I started to eat healthier, when I started to like hydrate, when I wasn't going out and drinking, all these things, I think that we're so adaptable as humans. And um, I didn't realize it was like you had to have the other side of the coin to realize how bad you actually felt. And I thought that that was a really interesting realization that I had. I don't know if you felt the same way.
Yeah, and actually, I have a picture on my phone and I've saved it since 2009. And I make sure if, I save a lot of photos of my kids and everything like that, but I make sure that that photo always gets saved. And I check myself on that photo, and it is when I was at my largest.
Mm.
And it's to remind myself, if I want to go have fast food or if I want to, that's not what I want to feel like. And I remember feeling I was just eating my feelings, right? That's what I was doing. I wasn't going to the gym. I had a gym membership. Wasn't going to the gym. It was 2 blocks away from my house. I would pass the gym to go to the place I was going to eat. I was not in the right mental state to be able to make those adjustments, and I never want to get back there. So, like you said, it's also, you have to remember what that felt like, and you're like, that was not good. So I need to take a step back and make sure that I'm okay with what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree, and it's funny that you say that because when you get adaptable, I think it's the word you used, and that's so true because at that moment I was happy. What was there not to be happy about? Well, I wasn't happy. I was covering up feelings for whatever purpose, and now I'm true happy, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And what a great story to be able to tell other people, of like, hey, like I've been there. Like I know what it's like to do these things, but I also know what it's like to take care of myself and what that feels like. And so now you can take that part of your life and you can use that to inspire other people to also prioritize their wellness. And I think when you can come as a leader and have that like relatability with people of like, I wasn't perfect either, like
Yeah.
I did these things too. It gives other people permission, it kind of brings down, I think, those barriers and those walls of like, oh, well, Chief knows what I'm feeling like, or like,
Yeah.
Chief had to get there and do these things, and so I can too. And I think that by sharing your story, that helps other people to maybe have those moments of self-assessment and then ask those questions, is there a better way? And I always tell everyone, everyone's always different, like um I've always been like an all or nothing to like my own detriment. But I always tell everyone like small changes over time create long lasting impact. So, how can you just do one thing that's different? Maybe um, instead of eating fast food with every meal, maybe you only eat fast food with 2 meals instead of three.
Right.
That's something. Then
Yeah.
we can build on that. And it's just maybe one like simple example, or like maybe you can go to the gym or jujitsu or yoga or whatever it is that feels good for you. Maybe it's even just walking. Maybe you can try to add that one time a week, you know,
Yeah.
30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. Something's better than nothing. And then we can build on that. But I think a lot of times when we talk about wellness, it becomes almost overwhelming that people then burn out or they feel defeated and then they quit altogether. So, how can we have this conversation of like, hey, like, yes, we want to get you there. And like, in order to get you there, we actually have to probably do a lot more than just like the one thing, but that one thing is going to compound over time.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it's so important to take it in small chunks, right? That
Mhm.
you gotta eat the elephant one bite at a time, and
Yeah.
it's one of those scenarios where you're going, oh, I got this workout plan for 5 days, and I'm starting, 5 days a week. Calm down. Let's break it
Yeah.
down. Let's make it realistic. Right. Again, if you're an all or nothing person, great. Go for it. Go forth and conquer. But again, it comes back to self-assessment. Are you going to be able to do that? And if you're not, that's okay, but start small then and get to 2 and then maybe 3 and then keep building on that. I always tell people, don't start on January 1st. The New Year's resolution thing, because the moment you, in your eyes, fail or miss a day, then you just throw it all out. And it's like, no, you can still continue to go, and move forward. That's okay. Hey, you missed a day. It happens to all of us.
Mhm.
So get back in there, and you're not starting from zero, right? You're starting where you left off. It's just, maybe
Yeah.
not the progress you exactly wanted to see or you thought you had to see, but you're going to get there. It's just that support too.
Yeah. I think the $1 million question, and this is something that we've talked about before on the podcast, but it's how do you get people to prioritize themselves? What are those conversations that maybe you have as a leader to, um, you know, for people to have that self assessment or that accountability and to take action in their own lives? Because we know that, we can talk about it all day long. You can provide every resource under the sun, but at the end of the day, it's up to the individual to
Yeah.
take that action in their own lives. So, do you have any secrets or like things that have worked for you that have helped to get people to prioritize themselves?
Uh, Secrets, not necessarily secrets. I mean, it's something that I think law enforcement talks about all the time. It's just building the right culture, right? We have to build that culture around wellness. Um, for me specifically in my department, right? Then this obviously won't work for everybody. So for ours, we have these conversations. I show anybody who wants to see that photo where I started and where I am now. We do a community 5K every summer. We do the Murph Challenge every Memorial Day, and we do that as a group. And it starts with our leadership. One of my lieutenants, he goes in the gym, and it's a community gym, and he's in there, every day before work that he can. And so when officers start seeing that, and they go, oh, okay, well if they can do it, I mean, why not? We're currently in the process of building a gym, actually, which will be at our police department, and getting them involved with that. Hey, what kind of equipment do you guys want to see? What do you want to see? You want to see resistance bands? Do you want to see what do you want to see that's going to make sense for the police department and for your job specific? So it's getting them involved. It's getting them involved in the wellness programs that we have. And we've had conversations before where, we started offering jiu-jitsu or the gym. And then, I asked my officer, I said, what do you want to see? Well, I want to see yoga. Great. Find me a class. Find me a class and we'll get you there. And bring back something to show the department. And it's really just getting that buy-in and that culture, which doesn't happen overnight. It has to be organic. You can't force culture on anybody. Mandatory trainings everybody's been through them. Nobody likes them. So you have to make it so that it's an organic feeling from the officers that they're getting a part of this as well.
Yeah. So your kind of structure is starting with leadership, but then also allowing everyone else to feel like they have ownership in what is going on.
Perfect. Yeah, ownership. That's probably the word I was looking for. It's that ownership of the fitness and wellness and this department. Yeah.
Yeah, love it. You have 4 pillars that you guys go off of. What are those 4 pillars?
I do. So we have physical fitness, wellness, physical wellness, mental wellness, we have spiritual wellness, and we have financial wellness. And those are 4 pillars to our wellness program that we have within the department that are really what we've decided we were going to focus on now. As we spoke about, they evolve, things change, but that's really our 4 main pillars at this point.
Yeah. How have you found, and I know you said it doesn't happen overnight, but it's those like small investments over time that you're, creating that culture of care. And I know that you said that mandatory is not your, um, what word do I want to think of? Your approach. You're really trying to create this to be like an organic buy-in. Have you noticed like an ROI on that? Are people receptive? Are people utilizing these things? Or is it still kind of like infancy and kind of getting everyone on board? Because we know things take time. And I would say that probably most chiefs I talk to say it's a little bit of a mixed bag. So,
Yeah. Yeah, we've seen a great influx in just the buy-in, and I think it's because we offer so many different avenues, right?
mhm.
So I have an officer who's very financially focused, so he's running with that. He wants to get all the officers involved in that. I said, great, that's yours now. That's yours. Now you take it and you get everybody to the point where they need to be financially wellness or financially where they want to be. On more the fitness side of it, we have a lot of officers who want to be a part of it. And so it does take time. It's not going to, again, that's not something that's going to happen overnight. And there's going to be people who gruff at it and they go, I can run my 1.5 miles. And it's like, okay, but can we get you involved in more things? And so, and it's really just personally just getting to know each individual and how they're operating and how they're doing. And so yeah, it's not easy, but with the right approach, it's completely doable.
Yeah. I think it's also understanding, to your point of getting to know each individual, of like understanding what is important to every person and what motivates every person, because everyone's going to be different. You might have one person that's like super motivated by peer pressure. Maybe they're like, okay, my peers are doing it, so like, therefore I'm going to do it. And you have other people that are going to be completely opposite. They're going to be like totally guarded by like what all of their peers are trying to get them to do, but maybe they're motivated more like intrinsically with, like, hey, like I like this is my why for wellness, and I want to make sure that I can retire and run around with my grandkids, and so therefore I'm going to do the thing because I have this like future goal. So I think understanding what motivates everyone and trying to like tap into those, and try to understand that, because it's not going to be blanketed. You can walk into a roll call or a briefing and there's 10 people and every single person is motivated by something different. And it's hard. I mean, I hats off to you guys in like leadership teams, because it's hard to teach things in different ways. It's hard to motivate every single person in different ways. But I think if you start to understand that, then you can like really tap into that, and that becomes a strength.
Well, and everybody's motivated by something different, but then at different times.
Mm. Yep.
I have an officer who has grandkids, and that's motivating him to work on his wellness because he wants to be around for them. To your point, I have some officers who are just starting their family, and then it's changing from maybe 2 years ago when they didn't have a family, so there was different motivations behind it. So it's constantly finding that and really keeping knowing the pulse of each officer and being okay. Well, this is going to help.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's 100% accurate. Yeah.
I think it goes back to what we said before of like these like incremental assessment periods.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. I mean, I've seen this too, where like the young guys, like I've asked like the brand new officers, they're like, well, wellness is for later because I feel good, right?
Yeah.
But they're like, I want to prove myself. I don't want to be the guy that can't perform out there. And they come in and they're like spit and vinegar, they're like rare and ready to go. And they want to prove themselves at all costs, so it's like, okay, well, if you want to be able to do that, then you got to do these things, and they're like, okay, or like maybe they have goals to be like in a certain position. They want to be a detective, they want to be in the SWAT, they want to be chief one day, whatever, and so they're like, I want to do everything I can to be able to, I'm like, okay, well, if you want to do that, you got to do this. Um, but I also had one guy, I thought this was so funny. I think this is so funny because it's like sometimes we take wellness a little bit too seriously. And I asked a group and we were getting these different answers, right? Of like what motivated people and what their why was for wellness. And this guy raised his hand and he goes, I just want my wife to be attracted to me.
Yeah.
He's like, I just want to be hot for my wife. And he's like, is that a bad answer? I was like, that is a great answer. That
It's an
is a
honest answer.
perfect answer.
Yeah.
And so like if you were taking that guy, for example, where he's like, my main motivator is like, I just physically want to look really good so that my wife continues to be attractive to me or attracted to me. And I have a successful marriage because she's still attracted to me. And we were talking to him and being like, hey, like retirement and grandbabies. And he's not even there yet. He's like, well,
Right.
that's not motivating me right now in my career. And maybe in 10 years that will motivate him. But right now he's like, I just want to have abs for my wife. How can you identify that and then tap into that?
That's again, it goes back to the original conversations that you have with these officers, and you have to have honest conversations.
Mhm.
And if that is one of the hardest things to do, especially with very type A personalities. And we have a lot of this where you sit down.
Yep.
It's just being able to have the conversation and say, listen, this is what motivates me. At my point in my life, this is what it is. And again, it goes into showing that photo and saying, hey, this is what I was. This is what I don't want to be. This is my why at this moment right now. And to your point, we don't do it quarterly. We do it every year. We're doing reassessments, but quarterly would even be better. And you just have those conversations because things are always changing. And so you have to get to know these. You have to get to know each and every individual and what motivates them in every aspect. To keep, we're heavy on the physical fitness portion of it, but there's four different pillars, and that means there's four different motivators sometimes. And some of those interlock, but you really have to know each individual officer. It's no longer a time where you're a payroll number. You're number 145. That it's not that anymore. It's all right, you're officer so and so, and this is what I know about you. I have an entire book, a notebook that has information, just personal information about each of my officers, just so that I
That's so
can
cool.
keep up with those things and saying, hey, how was the birthday party? And it's tough to remember some things because of all the, we're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. So I, a lot of times, take notes because that's what I need to do. And so, but it's knowing your officers.
Yeah.
And the only way you're going to be able to know an officer is by having an honest conversation. And those are one of the first times somebody left this department. I was shocked, and I was telling him me. I was blown away. I said, I feel like I'm doing well. In my opinion, I'm motivating. I'm a young chief, so I can, I'm getting out there and I'm talking with people. I'm going on the road with them. What happened? And I remember talking to my lieutenant. He's like, if you're shocked when somebody leaves, you don't know them well enough. And that was telling for me because maybe I didn't know them. Maybe I was having superficial conversations. So again, going back to your question, and I'm sorry that was a roundabout way of answering it, but it's really breaking down hey, Joe, how are you? How are your kids? How's the family?
Yeah.
Having those conversations first to build upon that.
I cannot stand superficial conversations. It's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I don't know like when that started happening in my life where I just am like, I don't have the energy for it. Like when someone just like does a drive by and they're like, how are you? You know, and then they don't even like stop to like look me in the eye. And it's just,
Right.
and everyone's been there. Like how many of us have been to a wellness conference and every conversation is just like, hey, how are you? Good. Yeah. How are you? Good. Great. Cool. And then like that's the end. And then you rinse and repeat that 100 times. And by the end of it, I'm like, I gotta go. You know, there's no
Yeah.
depth to it. And
Right.
so I like this idea of how can we ask better questions? How can we have conversations that are genuine and go beneath the surface? And one of the things that like popped into my head, and this is really random, but I
Yeah.
was thinking, I'm like, how cool would it be if, as a chief, every interaction or every time, someone did something really cool, you wrote it down, and then when they retire, they have a whole like book or like these little entries of like
I gotta
really
take
cool
notes. Hold on.
things that like happened, like and then you can look back on like these cool conversations, these cool events, all these things throughout your career. Like, how cool would that be? Obviously, like the bigger your organization is, maybe the harder it is. And maybe you need like your
Yeah.
command staff to kind of help, deliver some of those cool kudos stories and stuff. But
Right.
that was what popped into my head. I'm like, I would love to have something like that at the end of, my career of like, wow, like I did something pretty cool.
That would. I love that idea. And I think that's going to be something we try to implement something similar to that, because you're absolutely right. We all take personal notes. We all have things like that. But how neat would that be to have something that I could give as hey, these were the things that you've done, and it's not so much on a professional standpoint. Yes, it's important, but it would have more. This is what you did for the department. Remember when
Mhm.
this happened? And it's just, yeah, I think that would be great.
Yeah, no pressure. It just like popped in
Right.
my head.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I
I
think it's
was
a great
like,
idea. I'm
wow, like
stealing it.
that'd be kind of cool. Um, my final question is for the younger generation. What words of wisdom would you share with them that maybe you wish you would have known earlier in your career, or something that really helped you along the way that you want to pass on to them?
Yeah. What a fantastic question, and I think it's so incredibly important. There's really two things that pop into my mind. Is one, it's okay to say no. It's okay to say
Mhm.
no to the things that you don't feel comfortable doing. Um, I can't tell you how many times people have taken overtime and they don't want to. So really, what service are they providing? But also mentally, are they draining themselves? So it's okay to take a step back and be like, "Ah, too much. I'm done." Um, and the last thing, which I've quite honestly built my career on, is take that chance. I've heard so many times, "I'm just not ready. I just don't feel like I'm ready." You're never going to be ready. When I took this job, like, I was I know mentally I was like, I'm not ready for this. But realistically, when you have the support system in place, you're going to be ready. They won't let you fail, and you have to have that mentality where you're not going to fail. So take the chance. It's okay to take that promotion. It's okay to take that new job if it means you're moving, but that's a big deal. But maybe that's best for you and your career and your family. Take that chance. I think that's great.
Yeah. Thank you. I
Yeah.
had someone tell me one time, and this I think is in line with what you said. They said wellness is about boundaries.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm really bad at that. Like, I did not grow up in this current generation where it's all about boundaries. I grew up in the like, I'm going to say yes to everything because I don't want to be difficult to work with. And then I'm going to suffer because of that. And so, this idea of it's okay to take care of yourself, it's okay to say no, it's okay to have boundaries and, and not, I'm going to put this like in quotes, but not like kill yourself for it, like you
Right.
don't like want, like it shouldn't be to your own detriment that you're saying yes to everything. You
Yeah.
can say no sometimes. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you, and I appreciate being a part of this. This is something that's near and dear to my heart, and I think it sounds like it is for you as well. So I'm really hopeful that this takes off and we can we can really start changing the larger picture of law enforcement.
Yeah. Thank you for your time. I really appreciate you coming on here with me today.
Thank you.